Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I will be talking about Paul W.S. Anderson's 1997 science fiction horror movie Event Horizon. The movie takes its name from the spaceship on which most of it is set. The in-narrative Event Horizon launched in 2040, equipped with an experimental gravity drive capable of folding space-time and allowing it to travel vast distances near instantly. The ship's planned maiden voyage was to Proxima Centauri, some 4 light years from Earth. But the ship vanished without a trace. At least it did for 7 years. And then, suddenly, a bizarre signal, screams, howls, and what sounds like a voice speaking Latin, is received from the Event Horizon, which has reappeared. US Aerospace Command dispatched the Lewis and Clark rescue vessel to investigate. The ship's regular crew were joined on this mission by Dr. William Weir, who designed the Event Horizon. Upon reaching the ship, the crew find signs of a massacre. As they search for survivors, the Event Horizon's gravity drive activates and unleashes a shockwave that breaches the hull of the Lewis and Clark. The would-be rescuers now have no option but to move to the Event Horizon while they try to repair their own vessel. But, as the grisly signs of violence suggest, the Event Horizon is not a safe place to be. After the success of his 1995 action film Mortal Kombat, Paul W.S. Anderson was inundated with screenplay offers, including the opportunity to direct the Mortal Kombat sequel, which he wisely turned down, and also the planned X-Men film. To Bryan Singer's benefit, Anderson also turned this down in favour of making Event Horizon. Apparently, his motive was that he was more interested in making an R-rated horror movie than continuing to work in PG-13 films. And with 6 Resident Evil movies now under his belt, it does seem like Anderson really does like his R-rated action horror. Although he'd chosen Event Horizon as his project, Anderson wasn't entirely happy with the script, which he felt was too derivative of Alien, so he gave it a major rewrite to align it more with a classical haunted house narrative. He then assembled a talented cast of on-screen talent: Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, Jolie Richardson, Kathleen Quinlan, Jason Isaacs and Sean Pertwee all play significant roles, and set to work. The filming process was apparently very difficult, with Jolie Richardson describing the production as feeling cursed. The normal 10-week editing process was slashed by nearly half to compensate, leading to an initial cut that shocked both the test audiences and the Paramount executives who had funded the movie. None of them had expected it to be as graphic and gory as it was. Paramount forced Anderson to make cuts, but it didn't help the film at theatres. Event Horizon opened to negative reviews and a box office that came in well below its production budget. But then the film found a second lease of life on DVD, and it has even enjoyed a critical reassessment in recent years. In 2024, Variety went so far as to name it one of the top 100 horror movies of all time. So what do I think? Well, I think it's a mixed bag, actually. Let's be honest, pretty much any science fiction horror movie is going to have to work pretty hard to avoid comparisons with Alien. Assuming, of course, that avoiding comparisons is even a goal of the filmmakers. Plenty of SF horror movies are happy to aim straight at that "we heard you liked Alien" marketing opportunity. When it comes to Event Horizon, I'm willing to believe that Anderson did indeed rewrite the script to make it less like Alien, but I don't think he's really succeeded in distancing this film from its more famous predecessor, certainly not as much as he may have intended. Some of this is the pure horror movie in space means you're going to think about Alien element, but even setting that inevitability aside, there's still a lot of xenomorph DNA in here. The sequence after the crew wake up out of hypersleep and confer on the rescue mission, for instance, is very strongly reminiscent of the opening sequences of the 1979 classic. And it seems the set designers didn't get the memo about, not looking like Alien, because everything happens on sets that would not look out of place on the Nostromo. Of course, I've often said that execution beats originality. I'd rather watch a well-made Alien remix than a botched attempt to do something different. So where does Event Horizon end up in that analysis? Well, again, it's a bit of both. Let's start at the beginning. I saw Event Horizon at theatres when it came out nearly 30 years ago, and I thought it was a pretty successful, tension-inducing film at the time. But sitting on the couch at home to watch it is a very different experience to seeing it on the big screen, and I'm also a lot more familiar with the various techniques of scary cinema these days than I was back then. As often as this film manages to be creepy, and it does manage it fairly often in the first half, it throws in a cheap jump scare or hysterically overdone sequence that stops just short of having some guy walk on screen with a placard saying, "Are you scared yet?" Subtle, this is not. But up until around the hour mark, I think this film does work very well in its efforts to be a haunted house in space movie. Unfortunately, it then attempts what seems to be an alien-style genre shift from spooky tension to horror action, and it simply doesn't carry it off with the same panache as that earlier film. As a side note, if you think the first part of Aliens wasn't scary, dig up the original theatrical release sometime and rewatch it up to the point of the first alien attack. It's a darn effective piece of horror filmmaking, and a reminder of how good a director James Cameron once was. Now, you can't always pin down the moment where a film goes off the rails, but the Event Horizon, I think it's pretty easy. It's when Sean Pertwee's character dies. It's not the event itself that is the issue. As much as I enjoy Pertwee's work, his role in this film is a secondary main element of the cast. He's a main character, but he's one of the secondary ones. The thing is, the explosion that snuffs out his character marks that dramatic shift in the film's tone, from effective, if thuddingly unsubtle, haunted house film to much less effective and equally as unsubtle action movie antics. While Anderson's script does make one last gasp effort at a scare right at the end, in my opinion, the film has at that point so thoroughly frittered away its tension and impact that this attempted reversion to the earlier creepiness didn't land effectively. Anderson would go on to direct another financial flop the following year, 1998's Soldier, which is a movie I personally adore, before finding the franchise that would cement his position as a critically maligned but commercially successful purveyor of action horror, the Resident Evil series, which I have talked about on here before. Next time, the 1930s and 40s saw a somewhat surprising number of fake haunting thrillers where some villain fakes supernatural phenomena for nefarious purposes. 1948 offering The Amazing Mr. X, also known as The Spiritualist, is just such a movie. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you've seen Event Horizon, let me know what you thought of it.